The government has manipulated the jobs numbers once again. You are not going to believe this. Some absolutely insane data. So we just had the payroll report. Canada sheds 2,800 jobs in July. Jobless rate stays at 6.4%. So this is what it looks like on a chart. Jobless rate essentially the same, but we're going to get into how fast this market is deteriorating. It is completely insane. You're not going to believe the manipulation that the government did in this report, and you just can't believe it, honestly. So this is what it looks like, all the payroll reports that we've had over the past 12 months, and you look, we've had 2 negative reports now, and it's actually way worse than this even suggests. So we'll get into what happened right now. So labor force survey, all the links in the description here. So the private sector employment declines. The number of private sector employees fell by 42,000 in July, following 2 months of little change. On a year-over-year basis, private sector employment growth was up by 0.6%, plus 86,000 in July. And just bear in mind with that number, plus 86,000, obviously you've got the massive growth in the population. The fact these figures aren't adjusted very well for that. So it means the private sector employment is getting considerably worse. So public sector employment rose by 41,000. I mean, are we expected to just believe that it's a coincidence that the public sector employment rose by 41,000 and the private sector declined by 42,000? You guys who've been watching this channel, and we cover this report monthly, so stay tuned if you want to see this every month. We've seen this before. This is just insane now. It is blatantly obvious in my eyes that the government is manipulating the report. I mean, think of the probabilities of that happening. And it's happened twice this year. I think it was January's report where we had the exact same thing, which I've always said is the most doctored and manipulated report that you have. So it's absolutely crazy. So public sector employment rose by 41,000 in July and was up by 205,000, plus 4.8% compared with 12 months earlier. So the government has grown by 205,000 jobs. Do you think those are going to be productive jobs? Do you think that they're helping the Bank of Canada's quote-unquote productivity emergency? I mean, I can guarantee that a lot of those jobs are doing the complete opposite of helping the economy. Those jobs are there to administer more red tape and more regulation on an already burdened economy by massive amounts of institutional corruption, massive amounts of red tape and regulation that stifles competition. So it's absolutely crazy what has happened. Up 4.8%, and the private sector barely moved. So if you look at the country and what happened, this is the map of unemployment. Little changed in Alberta. You can see unemployment rate up 0.3% in British Columbia to 5.5, 5.4 in Saskatchewan, pretty much unchanged, 5.7% in Manitoba, up 0.6%, Ontario down slightly from 7% to 6.7%, Quebec flat, 5.7%, you've got New Brunswick, 7.2% down, you've got Nova Scotia, 7%, that's up, you've got PEI, 8.9%, and that's up nearly 1% from 8 to 8.9%, crazy. And then you've got Newfoundland and Labrador, 9.6%, adding 0.4%. Canada overall flat, 6.4%. But you can see how the difference is kind of crazy between the provinces there. You can also see a trend as well. Obviously, we know Alberta and Nova Scotia unemployment has been heading up, and this is where a lot of people are moving. So obviously the jobs, the economy is not supporting that. And then we have what happened by sector. Wholesale and retail trade lost a heck of a lot of jobs. You had more finance, insurance, real estate jobs gone down. We've said about that likely to happen. You've had accommodation and food services shedding, manufacturing, business building services. And then if you look at some of the gainers, you've got public administration, transportation and warehousing, professional, scientific and technical services, information, culture and recreation, construction, utilities. The rest is kind of flat there, guys, but it's just crazy. And now I want to go into what Canadian Tire's CEO said. Incredibly important, obviously. Canadian Tire is a big chain across Canada, big box store. So what is the head of Canadian Tire saying? The head of Canadian Tire Corp says indebted shoppers are cutting back on spending spending even more, and he doesn't see that trend turning around quickly. Wait, what? He doesn't see that trend turning around with the Bank of Canada cutting rates? This is unbelievable, guys. I mean, it's just so ridiculous, isn't it? That narrative just completely falling apart. Greg Hicks, president and CEO of the housewares and sporting goods retailer, says consumers tighten their belts considerably as the high cost of living continues to pummel their spending power. So you got a big box store. They're selling mostly products, if you think about that, what people don't actually need. These aren't things like food. And they're saying that, hey, people aren't coming into the store. They're not spending money. This is hugely indicative. And obviously it's a Canadian chain as well, national across Canada. So it's kind of like a bellwether for the economy. So it's crazy what's happening. And then you only have to look at what happened at the CNE job fair to realize that the labor market is falling apart. And the unemployment rate that the government says we're at, 6.4%, is completely insane and wildly not accurate. So let's get into this and what's going on here. So CNE officials said about 37,000 people registered to attend the job fair this year. So let's put that into context. Officials were expecting 3,500 and 5,000 candidates to turn up. Out of the tens of thousands who applied, only 5,000 will get a job at the CNE, which runs from August 16th to September 2nd. CNE Association CEO Daryl Brown said he welcomes the interest in the job fair, but finds the increase in the number of applicants from last year concerning. The CNE received more than 18,000 applications last year. So think about that. It's like doubling the amount of people turning up at this job fair. What does that tell you about wages? What does that tell you about the pressures on wages? They are going down. Obviously, we know a lot of the immigrants coming into the country, unfortunately, are going into those low-skilled jobs, which are suppressing wages. So you've got unbelievable demand there from people going to these job fairs. We've seen them in Calgary. We've seen them in Toronto. We've seen them in Vancouver. This has been something that's been going on for the past 6 months. And if you've been following this channel, you'll know that. So it's absolutely crazy what is going on. And then you've got the Bank of Canada fears jobs outlook may delay consumer rebound. And this was before the new report that we got came out. But they're effectively saying, oh my God, it's going to delay the rebound. But if you really think about the rebound, there ain't going to be no rebound. The Bank of Canada is completely asleep at the wheel, just like the Federal Reserve, in thinking that we're just going to have this soft landing. And as the economy deteriorates even more, and we have to dig through this data of government manipulation, unfortunately, because that's what it is. All this data is manipulated. It's not accurate. Like I said, it's no coincidence that the government added 41,000 jobs and then the private sector lost 42,000 jobs. I mean, it's just completely insane. Anybody who says that isn't manipulation is just crazy, in my opinion. And then you look at the 10-2 spread in the United States, keeping our eye on this. It actually briefly uninverted last week during the stock market crash. The reason why you need to keep an eye on the United States 10-year spread is obviously the yield curve is inverted right now, but we have to keep an eye on this because the United States is Canada's biggest trading partner. And it looks increasingly likely the United States is going to be entering a recession in the next 6 months and joining Canada for that party. So what is that going to mean further for Canadians and the Canadian economy? It's going to mean bad things for the economy moving forward, bad things for the job market. Obviously, if people aren't spending money out there, what does that do to the job market? It creates more unemployment because people aren't spending money. It feeds back into that loop, that self-reinforcing cycle of earnings go down for businesses. That means that they lay people off. That means that more people aren't spending money, and you just go round and round and round. So you have to really look at what's going on with the 210 spread, because when that uninverts, the recession in the United States usually occurs within the next 6 months, or it's already in recession in the United States. And we've already seen the financial markets, the volatility has skyrocketed over the past couple of weeks. It's not just the yen carry trade. There is much bigger things going on under the hood, and I think it's worth noting. So this unemployment report, absolutely the craziest report we've had since January here, just manipulated completely and utterly by the government. I think that's obvious. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out this video here. And if you're looking for a VPN to protect your privacy, use the VPN that I use, the affiliate link in the description and the pinned comment, expressvpn.com/marketmania. I will see you in the next one. Take care.